Good day, everyone. Based on where you are, the time may vary, so I just say good day. I'm Dr. Bisa Lewis, and I'm excited to be here. I am the founder and the managing partner of Wean's Curriculum. Today, I am so excited to be interviewing Dr. Debra Sullivan. She's going to talk with us today about cultivating the genius of children, of young children, and some of the things that we should be doing in early learning programs to support them holistically. I could go on and on about everything that she has done and published out there in this world. You guys read some of it before you chimed on to look at this interview today. But I want Dr. Sullivan to share a little bit about some of her work, her amazing publications that she has. Some of you guys may be using them in the classroom at the college level. If you're not, you need to be using them at the college level. So greetings, Dr. Sullivan. It is so great to see you virtually. And
Yes.
It's been 4 years, I think, since we've seen each other in person.
And so.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you took your precious time to come and talk to us today about all the amazing knowledge, much of the amazing knowledge that you have about working with young children in early learning programs. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here and having this conversation with you.
So tell us some about your amazing work. We know, I know you have an academy. We'll talk about that. I know that you have a variety of publications out there. And so I want you to start and share what some of your babies are and let everyone know from your own passion and standpoint.
Well, first off, I am proud to say I'm past president of the Seattle affiliate of the Black Child Development Institute, because our institute is where we're all volunteers, and we do a lot of work in the community on behalf of Black children and Black youth. And it has been very exciting. Our literacy work, our work with the incarcerated Black teenagers, and just our work on strengthening families. And so I definitely want to share that. I have written a lot of articles and books. One of the books that sometimes is used in early childhood education programs is my book, Learning to Lead. And it's a self-directed guide for early childhood teachers and providers and administrators to really think about their role in the leadership process and their role as leaders for children. So that's one of my books. The one that we're going to probably spend the most time with today is Cultivating the Genius of Black Children. And with that book, I looked at the research that has been done regarding how Black children learn best, what are the best learning, what are the learning styles, what are the multiple intelligences. I looked at adult-child interactions, cultural expectations, worldview, historical experiences. And I actually started looking at the research written back in the early 1900s, like 1902 and W.E.B. Du Bois and the Talented 10, all the way through contemporary times. So multiple researchers, multiple continents, multiple decades, and whatever showed up repeatedly, I put in my book, Cultivating the Genius of Black Children, and then took a look at what would classrooms look like and feel like and be like if our learning environments actually implemented what decades of research says works for Black children. So that's my biggest baby. And then I have created a school model, P12 school model, Ashe Preparatory Academy, that basically is going to be, I should say, a demonstration lab school of what that learning environment looks like. So hopefully we will be opening this fall. That's what I'm working towards. Times are challenging and changing right now, but also very exciting. Lots of time to think and to do something entirely different.
Well, thank you. I hope everyone, I know everyone is feeling that warmth in their heart because you're thinking, wow, look at all that she's done. And you can hear the passion in her voice. It's not about money, is it? It's about the passion, the work that needs to be done. Your first workshop that I ever came to when I went, wow, and I met you before I actually got a chance to see you speak at the National Black Child Development Institute conference. I believe the first one that we actually connected, what I think it was Nashville back in around 2010 or
Oh
so.
my goodness. Yeah, oh my goodness. Yes.
10 or 11. And I just was like following you around like a little kid. I just enjoyed you because it was amazing. And then I came to your workshop, one of the sessions you did, and this may have been in DC, but I remember this is right when Cultivating the Genius of Black Children was published. So I think that was in like 2015-ish.
Yes.
But I remember in your session, all the things you talked about, Dr. Sullivan, the art and the science and the child's brain and how they learn. I thought, her book is about cultivating the genius of Black children. And I thought, any child who could learn the way you're describing how we should be teaching and engaging children in learning, any child from any culture could benefit from this information because you're looking at a child's brain and how they learn. So I want you to comment on that. And then I want you to share, how would you describe a child's brain and how they think to parents and educators?
Well, and just in thinking about how children learn, I think it's important for us to remember that there's more than one way to learn things, and that our learning environments tend to focus on just two kinds of learners: the auditory learners, so think lectures and stories and that kind of thing, and then the visual learners. So in that sense, lots of textbooks and lots of, or in early childhood, any kind of books, but usually visual and auditory. And for so many children, the way their brain works is connected to other senses and other ways of learning. So for example, reflective learners, they're the processors. So they're the ones, their brain needs to sit with information. They like to think about things. They like to ponder things. They like to spend time with things and just really pay attention. And that's how their learning takes place. Or you have the experiential tactile learners. They need to do it. They need to live it. They need to be it. And when you think about it, all of us started off as experiential tactile learners because that's what babies are. And we learned everything about our environment through experience and through touching it. And then as we got older, many of us adopted other learning styles, but those still stay there. So when you think about learners, and when you think about art and science, for example, art is just this creativity and the ability to let the brain invent what it wants, to let the brain think about what it wants, to let the brain imagine what it wants. And science is about studying what is there and experimenting with that and challenging yourself on that and solving problems with what you have around you. And so when I explain to parents how babies' brains work, babies' brains are these wonderful intake output machines. They're super engines. Intake in the sense that they take in all that's around them, like when I was talking about science, and they play with it and they work with it and they figure out new ways of looking at things and new perspectives. But it's also an output engine because what the brain does is create and invent and imagine. And when the brain is doing that, it's making its own thing. And those things go out into the world. This is how it gets circular. I invent something, I create something, I envision something, then someone else takes that in. So it's this constant loop of taking in and making it uniquely your own, getting creative and inventive with it, and then sending something new and marvelous back out into the world. And children do that all the time. We just have to always be aware of the fact that we need to make sure that the environments that they are in allow them to do it. Because for so many of us, both our art and our science was stifled as we were basically in environments where this small content here is all you need to know and all you need to learn, and the only thing I want you to focus on. And for many of us, as we were growing up, we gave up trying. We just stopped trying, and or when we did try, we discounted what we had. Oh, I'm not a very good artist. Oh, I could never be a scientist. I could never do this. And it's all these messages that we send. So we have to be very careful with babies' brains and with young children's brains, that we understand that there is that constant loop of taking in and giving out and taking in and giving out, and then making space for that.
I love that. Yes. And it sounds like we don't have enough respect for a child's brain and their learning, because we're always thinking of it from an adult perspective. But look at all that's going on and so early. And based on how we interact, we engage with them early on, and we allow for their learning and provide those wait times that are needed. They can grow up to be one way or another, right? Because they weren't allowed to, or they were allowed to. So let's get into that. Based on what you shared with us, about how children learn in their brains, how magnificent they are. What does a quality early childhood classroom look like? And feel free to talk about the home environment as well, but definitely how do we cultivate learning in the classroom based on all the buzzes that are going on in a child's brain?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to be very intentional about and put right front and center is that any environment a child is in is their learning environment. Any environment at all, be it a classroom, be it the home, be it the playground, be it the grocery store, it doesn't matter. Any environment that a child is in is their learning environment. But going back just to the classroom, we have to realize that that environment is where children do their most important work of the day. That's their most important work. And if we're going to provide them with new opportunities and new experiences, we have to make sure that it is an environment where everywhere they look, that there is something they can't wait to get to. Now, that does not mean you have to have a chaotic learning environment. It just means that it has to be intriguing and interesting. And sometimes I go into classrooms and they are intriguing and interesting for grown-ups. So I'll go in and I will see that someone has their most precious globe that they inherited from their great great uncle that had been handed down through the generations. That is child punishment waiting to happen. You don't want them to touch it. You don't want them too close to it. You don't even know if they admire it or not. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that should be at home. That should not be in the child's learning environment. Because if it looks that intriguing, they're going to want to touch it. They're going to want to know about it. They want you to talk about it. So having really interesting and exciting things in the classroom that children can actually engage. It's a teaching and a learning environment. And too often we focus on teaching, that it is the place where the grown-up goes to work. That's their job. It's a place of employment, but it's the place where children come to learn. So making sure that there are constant things that are there so that they have some sense of security and permanence. And it gives them, again, with the reflective learning, gives them an opportunity to return to something, but to switch things out regularly so that they come in and go, oh, that's different. I wonder what that is. I wonder what I can do with that. And that can happen in the home environment. As a matter of fact, it often does happen in the home environment because as parents, when there's just too many toys, we just put some of them away, right? And then when we bring them back out, oh, look, and now that excitement has been sparked again. So I say that a good learning environment for cultivating genius lots of opportunities to do critical thinking, lots of opportunities to do problem solving, lots of opportunities to be creative and to think about how you can put two things together that don't normally go together, lots of opportunity to spark the imagination. That's what should be in the learning environment. And all of those things can be very educational. All of those things can be tied in with the content we need to teach. We just have to think about how firmly we're going to tie ourselves to a box of curriculum that says at 10:15, you need to be on page 52.
I could I could listen to you talk all day, Dr. Sullivan. Listen, WINGS is an acronym for Wonder, Interest, Needs, Goals, and Skills. We use the WIN, the Wonder, Interest, and Needs of children, to teach the GS, the Goals and Skills. That's how we like to tell people. I explain it because we are very adult-centered in the way we approach teaching and not learning. And so I love that you said that. And we get questions a lot when people call or go to our website and send messages. They want to know, is the lesson plan laid out? Well, it tells you what to do every day, all day. And, this is an international curriculum. And I think, wow, it depends on who you have in the classroom at that time. So we provide what are called monthly lesson plan ideas, and they're able to, no matter who you have in the classroom, you can adapt the curriculum to. And that's what learning is all about. And I think so many people focus on the teaching part and not the learning. So I love that you said that.
Thank you.
And I look at your environment behind you, Dr. Sullivan, and I would just love being in that classroom. And to me, that's what I consider a WINGS classroom. It's not a classroom where you have a bunch of bought materials all over the place, but it's things that come out of the learning environment. You may see books that you don't see in all the major catalogs, right? But I want you to speak to the statement I made about what a quality early childhood curriculum is, because and you did state some of that, and thank you, because we do get that canned curriculum question a lot. People really want canned curriculum, and that's not how children learn. And I'm thankful for the success of WINGS, but we want more people to learn and know how to implement this type of curriculum, because the ones that just lay out day to day, all day, they're not helping to reach the goals and cultivating the genius of children, as you're discussing. So,
well, first I want to address this environment. You see that there's like a guitar and some other instruments and things there. And those aren't decorations. Those are things that children actually get to use. So we teach children, well, we're not doing it right now because we're not doing any of this stuff in person, but when they see the guitar or they see the cowbells or any of the other instruments, we make sure that they have an opportunity to use them so that they can really think about literally engaging objects in order to learn, not watching someone play the guitar or listening to someone play the guitar, but learning to play the guitar. So getting back to the box curriculum, first of all, there's always good and bad in just about everything. There is nothing wrong with having a curriculum that comes and includes all of the pieces so that you can make sure that all the bases get covered. But teaching is also an art. It's not just a profession, it's an art. And what that means is that if you aren't able to teach children important content without something that tells you what to do and what to say throughout the day, then you're not engaging your own genius. You're not cultivating your own genius. I like to go back and make that close link between teaching and what happens in school and parenting and what happens at home. In early childhood, we often talk about parents as being the child's first teacher, but the teachers in the classroom are not always consulting with that teacher who's in the home. If the parent is the child's first teacher, then they They need to be consulting with that teacher because teachers consult with each other. They need to consult with that first teacher. Any of you who are parents know good and well you were not sent home with your baby in a box curriculum that told you what to do and say throughout the day in order to be an effective parent. You had to learn as you go. When they sent me home from the hospital with my firstborn, I was like, you've got to be kidding. You really want me to walk out of here with this tiny little thing, and you expect me and my husband to do all the things that you guys do and look for all the things that you've looked for and make all the decisions that you make? I'm supposed to do that by myself. It's like, where was that box curriculum? Right? So it, and yet we parent, and parent is teaching. It's guiding children's behavior. It's providing them with important content. It's helping them to understand who they are, how they are, who they want to be, and how they want to be. So when you're working with the box curriculum, that should be your guideline. I didn't say this about myself in the beginning, but I love to cook, and I love to cook a lot, and I like to experiment with cooking. And I literally, honest to God, have at least, if not more than, 150 cookbooks. And I read them and I use them. I have Barbecue Bible. I have Pure Vegan. I have What Do You Do with greens, green food. I have What Do You Do with Beans. I have the Potato Cookbook. I have Greek cookbooks. I have African cookbooks. I have European cookbooks. I like to cook. And what I do is when I come home, I love nothing more than opening the fridge, opening the cupboards, opening the pantry, and looking at everything and saying, what can I prepare that's going to be a great dinner with just what I have here in the house? And the art of teaching is knowing so much about the content that you can walk into a classroom, and no matter what children come into that classroom, you've got some ideas in the back of your head. Why? Because you have 150 cookbooks that you've actually read, right? So you can begin to imagine, okay, today I have a lot of children who are feeling kind of down and out because all the snow melted and now they don't have the snow to play in. How do I incorporate that in? Okay, this year I have a child who uses a wheelchair. So I need to look around my room. What new and exciting, accessible things can this child do? Are there lots of things this child can do that don't require not using a wheelchair? So when you think about a good curriculum, a curriculum is only as good as the art of the teacher. So study lots of curriculum. I've studied Montessori, I've studied high scope. I looked at gifted education, special education, experiential education, project-based learning, problem-based learning. I looked at all of those things. Why? Because they all have best practice that ends up matching what research says works for Black children, for example. So then I can come up with lots of different ways to weave in all of those things depending on what child walks into the room. A box curriculum cannot ever address the multitude of children who will pass through your classroom, not ever. It can't address every single one of them or meet all of their needs. It wasn't designed to. It was designed to give the grown-up a sense of confidence about what to do and when to do it, how much and for how long. If you really want to cultivate genius and really want to be an effective educator, you've got to become that artist.
You had to read all the cookbooks.
I like to read cookbooks.
I love that analogy. And I tell you, Dr. Sullivan, when I was the dean of early childhood education at Technical College in Georgia, I remember I was over the lab schools and at a university as well. And this is how Weens came about, because we use, as lab schools, we use different curriculum in different classrooms, different assessments in different classrooms, so that the early childhood education students could learn about the different curriculum programs,
Yes.
right? And I was just so astonished how, you're right, you needed a little bit of this and a little bit of that versus just this and just that. And so I love what you have stated, and the cookbook will forever stay in my mind. Because if you read them all, you can look around and see, what do I have today? And you can determine what you're going to use to teach. And I love that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the course of the day, what happens and what we're taught to do in terms of the daily activity schedule, and what children, from circle time to outdoor play to center time, all of those activities for the day. You mentioned children of color, Black children specifically, and now we know we are in the time where Black Lives Matter has expanded and more people are paying attention. What would you tell us is some of the major differences between how Black children should be engaged in learning? Because you have, many works on this. So give it to us and tell us what are the differences there, and what do we need to hone in on and do better?
Well, I think, the other thing I didn't mention is that my first degree, my bachelor's degree, is in cultural anthropology. And I've always been very much interested in cultures and in a variety of cultures. Like, I just wonder, how do people in other countries, when they wake up, just what is their daily routine, for example? What is their perspective? What is their approach? How do they interact with their children? What are their values around how children become grown-ups who can participate fully in that culture? So one of the first things I point out to people is that every culture teaches its young. Every single culture on the planet teaches its young. And so when you are thinking about interacting with children from different cultures, you have to also keep in mind that every culture has values around how children and grown-ups interact with each other when they're in the same space, what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And every culture has also its general worldview. And none of these things can be basically generalized to every single person in any particular culture, because we're all unique individuals. But at the same time, there are still cultural expectations. So when it comes to working with Black children, keeping in mind that if you know more about Black culture, you'll understand more, not only about Black children, but how they are trying to interact with you and engage you, and interact with the environment and engage the environment. So in Black culture, relationships are very important. We hold relationships so strongly that if I had to choose between talking to Miss Etta May, who is 97 years old, who I haven't seen in a long time, or being late for a meeting, I'm going to choose Miss Etta May over being late for a meeting, because time is not as important as my relationship with Miss Etta May. And so for Black children, they're constantly trying to establish a relationship with that teacher. They want to be in relationship with that teacher, which is why sometimes it's painful when they feel like their teacher doesn't care for them as much as she may care for other children in the classroom. And anybody watching us right now, you used to be a child. You used to be a child. You knew who the teacher liked and who the teacher didn't like. Everybody knows who teacher's pet is, and everybody knows who teacher is going to punish and discipline throughout the day. We all knew that. So do the Black children that we interact with now. So they're trying to establish that relationship. In addition, Black children and Black people like to engage what it is that they're doing. They want to be a part of it. They want to experience it. They don't want to watch someone play a guitar or just listen to a guitar being played on a CD or something. They want to do it. And so what you'll have are Black children who will look around this room and see all kinds of exciting things, and they want to engage it. It's like, why isn't this used in our learning? Why do I see maps on the wall that no one ever talks about or refers to? Why is that? So Black children want to actively engage their learning. They want to be in relationship with the teacher, because that's a big part of Black culture. And Black children are also very inquisitive, so they want to know why. And in many of our learning environments, why is seen as a challenge, not as an opportunity. Why is an opportunity to answer a question, to dig in and do some collective creative problem solving. Why is an opportunity to figure stuff out. And often it's just seen as just a challenge. We like to critique things. We like to analyze things, and we just want to figure stuff out. In addition, Black children, when they're young, and they recapture it again when they're grown-ups most of the time, have faith in themselves. They have faith in their peers. They have faith in their parents, faith in their elders, faith in society that we can do something, and that if something isn't right, then we'll just fix it. And they have faith and belief that they can do it. That gets taught out of us. For a lot of us as African Americans, we dig back down and we come up with that again, which is why even with Black Lives Matters and what's happening right now, we believe that the United States and the world can be different. And we know that if we work collectively together, because we're a collective people, we know that if we work together and if we believe it can be different, that we'll make it different. We believe we can do it. Yeah. So that's just a few of the things about working specifically with Black children. There's a lot more.
So we are more relational. And to me, that's a big thing that stuck out, because people do think it's disrespectful. And it's disrespectful when a Black child wants to, they're so inquisitive, number one. And also when they want to build that relationship, because as educators, oftentimes you pull back, and based on your culture, you may be taught there's a fine line between the educator and the student. And they just want to know that you care about them. And that's not always the case, right?
And they want to know that you're human. Mm-hmm. So they want to know that, well, I'm a kid. And did you used to be a kid? Well, obviously you did. Do you ever talk about yourself as a kid? Do you ever relate to kids as, I used to be right there. I can see why you have so many questions about this. There is so much to learn. And you're only 6. So you've got decades of stuff that you want to learn. We can't learn it all today, but let's just dig into some of it. So they want to know that you're human and that you understand what it means to be a curious child who just wants to be in relationship with you.
I love that. During, I again, talk to you all day. During the beginning of the school year, when everyone was starting to teach online and people were trying to figure out what to do, a lot of the training that we were doing for different school systems, pre-Ks programs around the country, they were really, first of all, they weren't sure about the online instruction piece. They didn't know what to do. And the biggest piece I was telling them was, use the culture of the children and the families. You have them right there. They're in their home. This is a perfect opportunity for you to invite a family and a person to read a story or sing a song, because guess what? They're at home. And I was doing some nutrition training with Georgia Organics. And this was through BCDI Atlanta, Black Child Development Institute Atlanta. And I simply had all of the teachers, the early educators on the training, because we were doing farm to ECE training. And I said, I'm giving you 2 minutes to go to your kitchen and grab whatever produce, it can be a fruit or vegetable, and bring it and hold it up to the camera. And we did an activity talking about what could you teach young children using that particular piece of produce or any produce. And that's how you bring in culture. And this was so important because the book that came out that relates to Farm to ECE, out of the 65 or so page book, there was like a page and a half maybe on culture, and which is why they asked us to support and to bring that to light. And so I'm happy that they knew when they were and they reached out to us. That was amazing. But I want you to talk about that, how we can engage families. You know, you have children right there, especially now being on the computer. But even if you are back in person, when you do go back in person, how can we engage their culture more? How can we engage their families more? Because we do often leave them out of the curriculum. And if we are relational learners, guess what? That's a major part, right? So please share, Dr. Sullivan.
Well, I think it's always been a struggle for our educational environments to engage families and to engage the communities where the children live. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with grown-ups' hesitation interacting with the other grown-ups. So a lot of people who go into education, particularly early childhood education, it's because they want to work with children. But children come with grown-ups. And so if you feel more comfortable with children, first of all, you have to just acknowledge that I'm more comfortable with children. The second thing you have to acknowledge is that children come with grown-ups. These children come with grown-ups. And if I'm going to consult the child's first teacher, and we say that is important, we have to, put our actions where our words are. If that is important, then I'm going to need to interact and consult with that parent, with that family member. And I think the other thing that's important is finding out what parents' goals and expectations are for their own children. I know my father had goals and expectations for me. My father was ex-military. He was an engineer. He didn't have any problem being very clear about what he wanted. And he would say, don't give me 99% when I asked you for 100%. My teachers never understood that. And they were always annoyed, for the most part, when I would say, well, I didn't get 100% on this activity or this test. What could I have done to make it better? And they would tell me, it doesn't matter. You did fine. You got almost 100%. Right, but somebody did get 100%. And what did that person do that I left out? How can I improve my work? And that's me trying to take ownership over, my education. So if they had consulted with my parents, they would have known, oh, Debra's dad wants to know how she can get to 100%. She may not always get there, but he wants her to know how she could get there. So now that we have the children at home, many of them at home, it is an opportunity to draw in families more. And what that means is that, and there are lots of reasons that those interactions don't take place. One could be that they're uncomfortable with the culture. Two could be that they're uncomfortable because they don't speak the language. Three could be that they're uncomfortable because this family's experiences have nothing to do with their own experiences, and they don't know if they can find common ground or if those differences in experiences will come up. And now I don't know how to talk about it, because in teacher preparation programs, they don't really teach you how to interact with other cultures at all. And I know this because I'm a cultural anthropologist. So one of the things I had to learn was, how do you begin to interact with a culture, whatever that culture is? It doesn't matter, whatever the culture is. I'm not just talking race or ethnicity. I'm talking, me as a female interacting with male culture, but how you don't get taught how to interact with another culture, but you got to do it. And because it's the teacher needs to make that initiative. Lots of times parents are more than happy to be involved. And it doesn't have to be just about their culture. That's why I said, talk about goals and expectations. What can the parent teach the teacher? Because we're all human beings with some knowledge. So it is an opportunity to collect more. It's easier to have parent gatherings by Zoom because people don't have to figure out transportation, and you don't have to figure out how you're going to feed people, and all of those kinds of things. So it is possible to have Zoom parent gatherings, not parent meetings, but gatherings with the teachers where you're socializing.
Mm.
Not some teacher-led activity of here's our curriculum, what do you think? Or, you tell me about your culture. And teachers have culture too. Share your culture. I don't see teachers like sharing their culture. One example that I use is, you were talking about bringing some produce, whatever produce was in the house. I was working with a very racially diverse, linguistically diverse a group of early childhood teachers once. And I had them all bring an avocado to our class. And so they brought the avocado to our class, and they all talked about in their culture what they did with avocados. They talked about their fried avocados, avocado used as a fruit, not as something savory, guacamole, obviously. So they all, and we cooked those foods. And so then we all got to share it. And then I told them, then you take the seeds and let children then grow avocado plants. So there are lots of opportunity to learn about our children's cultures if you take the initiative. And what you have to do is increase your cultural intelligence. And I didn't make this up, the cultural intelligence. It's all in the book because other researchers did this for me. But you have to first have awareness. You have to be aware that there are cultural differences. Some people say, well, I don't see different cultures. I just see children. I don't see color. Well, children see color because you taught them all the colors. So they are taught to distinguish colors and the colors differences. So you have to see color. Because I know other people in the world see that I am brown and know that I am Black. So there's awareness. Then you have to go get knowledge. We spend 13 years in the United States, kindergarten through 12th grade, learning about the experiences of Europeans in the United States. We don't spend 13 years learning about the experiences of any other group of people. I'm not saying you got to go spend 13 years with every single group of people that shows up in your classroom and is represented in your classroom, but you do need to know something about them. It's impossible to effectively educate children from groups that you're completely unfamiliar with because you don't know what they're expecting. You don't know what their culture expects. So there needs to be knowledge. And then there has to be some energy. You're going to have to actually, it's like you can gain lots of knowledge about how to speak Portuguese. I'm studying Portuguese. But if I never put energy into it and continue day after day after day to study Portuguese, then knowing that there is a Portuguese language out there and where it's spoken, it just doesn't matter. And then there has to be action. You have to now actually do something. I actually have to speak Portuguese. So if I don't speak it, then it's not going to happen. Now is the time to start doing that. And if you don't know where to begin, just start with hey, you know what? I realize this is an opportunity to learn more about you. I've seen your child. Your child definitely interacts differently when he's in the dining room at your home than how he interacts when he's in the classroom. And just with each child, just say, here's what I'm noticing, and make sure that it's good stuff. You don't want your supervisor to come and tell you all the things that you did wrong all day, every day. Nobody wants to hear what's wrong. Tell people what's right, what you notice. I notice that your child actually engages more because it is a different learning environment. So it's taking that initiative. And like I said, if you don't know where to start, just start by saying, hey, let's just get to know each other a little bit better.
I love that. I love the parent gatherings. because we don't talk about, educators don't talk about themselves with the parents. We just go from I'm in charge, come, and it's very one way. So I love that. So I'm hoping you guys are listening and making some notes and thinking about how you can update your calendars for the activities you're doing with your parents this year, where you can have more gatherings, and they're not one way, but you're actually engaging, and you guys are have a reciprocal responsibility and relationship in those different events. So that is a golden nugget you just dropped, Dr. Sullivan. So you guys are catching it. And my last question, this time it's just flown by. Oh my gosh, it is almost an hour here. My next question with you is about reforming teacher education, decolonizing it. But before I get to that, I think about everything that you've said today and how if only we would reconstruct the way that we prepare teachers, that they would engage with families better. They would more appropriately engage culture in the curriculum. Because I'm thinking back, I have 2 degrees in early childhood education, a bachelor's and a master's. And I did go to an HBCU for undergrad and my master's in EC. So I did have more cultural experiences in my background, but everyone doesn't have that. So as college professors ourselves, we think about, what class, is there one class or is it just a chapter in the curriculum course? How do we reform teacher preparation to ensure that we are graduating adults who know how to properly develop daily curriculum? And I'm not talking about a box or a book. I'm talking about the daily content and activities that children do that are implemented in the classroom every day. What can we do, Dr. Sullivan, to improve early childhood education?
I think first of all we have to get away from the word reform, because that is taking a form and then reforming it, but it's still the same thing. So what we have to do is we have to create education, not reform education. And the analogy that I make is that we have all the children on an airplane and the airplane isn't working very well. And so, but it's flying at, 50,000 feet at, several hundred miles per hour. And so then reform is trying to put a Band-Aid on the fuselage, but as soon as it hits it, it disintegrates. Why? Because it's a hot engine. And what we need to do is land the plane, let the children get off of the plane, walk away from the plane, go into the hangar, and create something else. So when I think about teacher education, as I said, all of this stuff, it's all connected, and it's back to that input output. If our educational programs are putting out students out of 12th grade, putting out students who really don't have a deep understanding of all of the diversity that makes up the United States, when they go into teacher preparation programs, that output is going to be pretty much the same thing. So when we are looking at teacher education, almost every teacher preparation program has some kind of diversity requirement. And I put it like that because there are all these things that you're expected to learn. You're expected to learn how to teach reading and teach math, and you're expected to learn how to teach social studies and teach science, and you take all these classes on how to teach that. In early childhood, at least we learn how to teach children. So we do study child development, but in K-12 teacher preparation, they don't often get much background in child development. So they know how to teach social studies, they don't know how to teach children. The other thing that that teacher preparation programs really lack is that they don't teach you how to teach other people's children. And that's what these are. These are other people's children. And so when you go to, and I believe Gloria Ladson-Billings, when she wrote Other People's Children, she was working, I believe, with indigenous children up in Alaska. And with the understanding that she, as an African-American woman, needed to know more about that indigenous culture and what the cultural expectations were, the adult-child interactions were, what were the important values for how those indigenous children would grow up to become indigenous adults. What was the expectations within that community? So she had to learn that on her own. Most teacher preparation programs are in larger colleges, and most of those larger colleges probably have an anthropology class somewhere. If you don't understand what culture is, then you can't see it in yourself, and you can't recognize how it can be different in another cultural group. So I think that all pre-teachers should take a class in cultural anthropology just to get a general understanding of what culture is and where those differences might reside, so that you can build on that. Too much of what teacher preparation does is prepare teachers to go in and give children the knowledge that they need, not to find out what knowledge they have, to give children the knowledge that they need usually out of that box of curriculum. And they're preparing teachers to go into a classroom and control and manage children, to make them sit still long enough to watch the teaching that is happening. So, that gets back to, this is another thing I think teacher preparation programs need to do. Many girls around the planet played teacher growing up. And you get your dolls and your stuffed animals. If you don't have those things, you get a fire truck, you get a rock, it doesn't matter. You gather your students, you get your pointy thing, and you stand in front of them and you point things and teach them, and they don't move, they don't make any noise. You have their undivided attention for hours at a time if you want to. And then you go into a classroom where living human beings, not dolls and stuffed animals and fire trucks and rocks, are now the students, and they're not going to participate in the same way. And so you need to learn how it is that you go into a room, not just to impart knowledge, but to hook that knowledge. We talk about scaffolding learning all the time. You can't scaffold without knowing what they got there to hook onto. So you bring the children's knowledge into the classroom. Teachers aren't taught how to do that either. When they are taught, they're taught to do that with isolated groups of children, highly capable, the reading specialist, maybe in some special ed classes, Montessori. We isolate little pockets where the child gets to bring themselves as a genius learner into the environment. But we don't give that to everybody. It's kind of like cultivating genius and involving children in the learning process is reserved for only just a small percentage of the population. And then we get the results that we have, and we wonder why this isn't working. So teacher preparation programs are not preparing teachers to teach in the classrooms that they go into. And teachers tell you this all the time. Teachers have been saying it for decades. I wasn't prepared for all of this.
Right.
Well, of course you weren't.
Culture shock, or they use the term culture shock, but yes.
Yes, and if you grow up, I'm in Seattle. If you grow up in some suburb, 40, 50 miles away from Seattle that's predominantly white, and you go into a teacher preparation program and you come out, the place where you're probably going to teach is going to be in Seattle or Tacoma or, Federal Way, one of our diverse school districts. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, those schools will be filled with children who don't look anything like you. And unfortunately, parents don't have children who look more like you to send to that classroom in their space. So every year, I hear teachers, I ask teachers sometimes, or, early childhood programs. It's like, So how many students of color and children who are learning English do you think you're going to have in your program? Well, we've got about, 12 different language groups in our program right now. Okay, yeah. How many did you have last year? Oh my goodness, there were a lot. There were like 10, and we're expecting, to have at least 15 different language groups and racial ethnic groups in our program next year. And I'm like, and you still don't have a plan? So that diversity is coming and you still don't have a plan? Teacher preparation programs know that diversity is there. Children of color they're outnumbering white children in our classrooms all over the country. And yet teacher preparation programs are not preparing teachers for that reality, even though you'll get in your research, you'll get all the data and statistics. This has been going on for what, 20 years, 30 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think it's a teacher education, teacher preparation reform. I think we have to create a teacher preparation program that meets the needs of what teachers are going to experience today. And that cannot be one class. It just can't be.
And I think about, when I first saw your book, Cultivating the Genius of Black Children, I said, this needs to be in the college teacher prep programs. I love your Learning to Lead book as well. And so before we get to the resources and where we can find all your amazing works, I do want to ask you an assessment question. What are your thoughts on assessment? Because we talked about this, we assess appropriately, and we know there are all kinds of forms and tools and instruments out there. But tell us, Dr. Sullivan, what are your thoughts on the approaches to assessment, appropriate assessment?
Well, I think what we have to do is rethink what we mean about the words and get back to the big picture. So the big picture of assessment is we want to see children grow and develop, and we want them to develop some skills and some abilities and to strengthen a knowledge base and foundation that we can continue to build on. So, that's the big picture. The assessment is supposed to tell us how close we are to it. Also, we have to think about, in our worldview, is the assessment a capital letter, which is the beginning of a sentence, or is the assessment a period, which is at the end of the sentence? So I often see people who use the assessment to determine who a child is, the period, the end of the sentence, rather than where the child is beginning, the capital letter, the beginning. The assessment should tell me, oh, this child is here. This is the capital letter. Here's where I need to go from there. Rather than, oh, I took an assessment and this child is X behind on A, B, C, D, and E. Ta-da, and then move on to the next thing. So we need to think about when we do assessments, is it the beginning or is it the end? You can also have both. Most of our sentences start with the capital letter and end with the period. It might end with the question mark, and it might end with an exclamation point. But when you think about assessment, that's what we have to just move out of that word assessment and start thinking about, what is the big picture? Where are we headed? The other thing I would say is that there are lots of ways to assess a child. One of the ways is to let them engage in free structured activities that are preset up by the teacher. So you can make sure that there are several places in the interest areas where a child can engage a concept that you've been teaching. Your job is to know that when they're working with those blocks, this is the content that they're engaging. When they are in the dramatic play area, this is the content they're engaging. When they're in the arts area, when they're in the technology area, your job as the teacher is to know that when Debra picks up the crayon and starts to draw, that I am exercising fine motor skills. Send children off, a la high scope, for example, plan, do, review. Send them off to go and do things. Then you walk around and look to see, can Debra do those things? Check, she can. Check, she can. Instead of, Deborah, it's time for you to come over so I can test you on your ability to do A, B, C, D, and E. If you watch children, they will show you what they've learned. If you listen to children, you can make a list of all the words. You can pick one child a day, make a list of all the words you heard that child say that day. Now you know what my vocabulary is, rather than bringing in an assessment like Peabody and say, you know, okay, here's a picture, you tell me the words. Now I can only give you the words that are in those pictures. Those are the only words I'm allowed to give you. And if I don't give those words to you, you make an assessment about my language skill and ability. But I know hundreds of other words that I use at home that you would never ask me about here, for example. And what words do they know in other languages? If I know 1,000 words in English, I can learn 1,000 words in Portuguese. If I know 1,000,000 words in English, I can learn 1,000,000 words in Portuguese. So finding out how much language the child knows, how many words they know in their own language, and then build on that. Now, that may mean that you need to know the Somali word for something, you need to know the Vietnamese word for something, you need to know the Spanish word for something, you need to know the Russian word for something. So you're an educator and an educated person, then go learn those words. So that when you hear a child talking, you can still make an assessment. But that's an observing and a listening assessment, not just my piece of paper with the boxes and the check marks.
Yes, I love everything you're saying. We in Wings, we use assess, evaluate, plan. The assessment evaluation model is circular. It's circular.
Yes, it's circular. Yes.
So you assess, and people don't know the difference between assess and evaluation. They're assessment and evaluation are two different behaviors.
Yes,
so
they are.
We know you're collecting the information when you're assessing, but evaluation, you're reviewing the information to find value in it. And then you're using what you've collected to plan for the child, but you're not done there. You got to go back and reassess to determine whether what you plan and what you put in the environment when they went to learning centers and outdoor play, when you had stories, when you had the songs, you were singing and dancing, were you able to collect the data you need to collect to help that child learn or what you need to tweak to as you assess again. So it's cyclical. It continues. Yes. And people forget that. And so I'm so thankful that you shared that, Dr. Sullivan, because we look at those words and we get intimidated by them.
Yes, we do.
Practice. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then we like, well, I don't have time to do this, and this, because I have to do all these assessments and evaluations. What you want to know is, can the child do what it is that the child needs to do? And like I said, if you give them an opportunity to do it, but they want to do it in real life. They don't, it gets back to, like I was talking about, that experiential learning. They want to experience it. They want to actually just go and do it. And if you know all the ways that you can tell if a child has mastered A, B, C, or D, you list all of those out, and then you watch to see if the child can do it. Then you don't have to spend time with a long sheet of paper doing an evaluation and assessment, trying to cram that all in. It's like, oh, let me just take a look at this assessment. Wait a minute. Let's see. Dr. Bisa did this on Monday, and she did that on Tuesday, and this one on Wednesday, and that one on Thursday. Let's see, what do I still need to look for? And then you might have to say, out of this list of 10 things, I need to ask her to just come show me this one thing. But I've seen her do it all these other things all week long. So now your sheet of paper is filled out. Yes. And you didn't have to spend, a half an hour with each child trying to get them to do it all sitting right there.
You plan for it, right? Yes. That's evaluate plan. That's evaluate plan. You don't just okay. Oh my gosh, this is, I just wish everyone could just listen to you all day, because you're full of and I just love the way you explain it, because we make things seem so difficult when the analogies you use, the way you explain things, it just makes it go, oh, okay, it's just that simple. I think we have to be aware that we need to learn these things. and be willing to make those changes. And they're minor changes. And the biggest change I hear you saying, Dr. Sullivan, is that people need to step back, especially as educators, and stop just being the front person. Step back and be more engaged and allow it to be a two-way, three-way even street when it comes to the families, listening more, observing more, allowing others to initiate. Because with infants and toddlers, we're really good at response. Well, we're not really good at it, but we know research-wise that responsive caregiving is how we work with infants and toddlers, that we do based on what they do. But once they become 3, a switch goes off and we forget about the responsiveness. So,
and that's really interesting that we do, because as adults, we expect people to be responsive. Like when we're teaching grown-ups, we expect them to be responsive. We expect exactly those same kinds of things as grown-ups. No grown-up wants to be in front of a class teaching grown-ups, other grown-ups who just sit there and just stare at them quietly. We don't want that. We want that responsiveness. We want that relationship. We want that interaction, because that's where the best learning takes place, is when the teacher and the learner both care about the end goal and are both aware of each other's role in that relationship in getting to that end goal.
Relationship. You guys hear that? Relationship is key. We have to have a relationship, and it's not, and that's even deeper than a partnership, because a relationship is more intimate than a partnership. I love it. So Dr. Sullivan, where can we get all of your amazing publications? We'll be sharing some links out for you. Where can we go? Because you have so much out there. Tell us, we're listening.
Well, first of all 3 of my books are available from Red Leaf Press. And so that's a good place to start. You could probably find some on Amazon as well, you know, if you prefer to go that route. A lot of the articles that I've written, I wrote a number of articles for Exchange magazine and Child Care Exchange. And so there are a number of them that are in there. I did write now I can't remember where it is. So I wrote, as you know, I wrote Cultivating the Genius of Black Children. That's also with Red Leaf Press. But I also wrote a chapter called Gifted Genius that is in another publication that is really looking at educating Black children. And I wish I could tell you what the name of that book is now, but I will try to get that information to you. You can, you know, share it another time. But I did take a look at Black children in gifted programs and how severely underrepresented they are. And so, and all of the processes and procedures and practices that are set up in order to, what I said at the beginning, in order to honor only a certain narrow band of learning and intelligence, and then highlighting that to the detriment and the exclusion of all others. You will find geniuses in 10% of any population of people that you put together. Any population, 10% are gifted within that population. So that means we're losing out on a lot of geniuses. And they're the ones that are going to help save our world, save our planet, make our countries and our societies a better place to live. So we need to make sure we go find those geniuses. So that's another piece that I wrote.
I love that, because, you know, we're definitely overrepresented in special education. People
Oh, definitely.
color, but underrepresented, never even given a chance to test to see if we were gifted. So, and then what does that really mean? Test it to see if you're gifted, you know? So I love all of your works. You are amazing. You are a treasure. And my goal today was definitely to for those who have not gotten to know Dr. Debra Sullivan and her work, please know that she is here. She is been doing this work. She's not new at it. There's a lot of new equity work going around, cultural responsiveness, cultural relevance work going around, but she's been doing it. And I love talking to gurus who didn't just show up to class. As inside joke, Dr. Sullivan and I talk about this article recently about being late to class. So I love how aware you are. I love how passionate you are. And I love that you don't mind educating others. And my quote that I like to share with people is, die empty. The cemetery has no use for your potential. And I say that because some people leave so much on the table. We don't know when our time is coming, but these videos, recordings will be out there, Dr. Sullivan. Our books, our articles will be out there. Anything we've created from this brain will be out there long after we're gone. And that's definitely my goal. And one of the reasons why I created Wings Curriculum. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And yes, for children. So we'll be sharing those links. And until then, guys, be great to children. And I love to say, you've been buzzed. Have a great day. Stop recording.